During dinner, my daughter-in-law suddenly exploded, humiliating me in front of everyone. "And how does it feel to be miserable and a loser at your age?" Jessica launched those words with such contempt that the air in the dining room turned dense. We were sitting around the table, the very table I had helped them pick out when Mark and she moved into this house 3 years ago. The overhead light illuminated the china plates and the tablecloth I had ironed that very morning. My son had his eyes glued to his plate of food. Mia, my 14-year-old granddaughter, opened her eyes wide with horror, and Jessica looked at me with that crooked smile I already knew too well, waiting to see me crumble like a house of cards. But I did not crumble. Not that night. Something inside me, something that had been dormant for years, woke up with brutal clarity. I lifted my glass of water and drank slowly, letting the silence stretch like a shadow over the table. Then I looked her directly in the eye and answered with a calm I did not even know I possessed. "And how does it feel to lose the person who paid your debts and brought food into your house?" Her smile froze. Mark lifted his head for the first time all evening. Mia brought a hand to her mouth. And I, Eleanor, at 68 years old, felt something I had not felt in a long time. I felt like I was getting my voice back. That night marked the end of something that had begun much earlier than that dinner, much earlier than those poisonous words. Everything had started to fall apart so quietly that I almost did not notice. Little humiliations disguised as jokes, comments wrapped in fake smiles, glances that said more than any insult. But that night, it all exploded, and what came after changed my life forever. Let me tell you how I got here. How a woman who gave everything for her family ended up sleeping in a room next to the laundry room. How the same hand that rocked my son's cradle became the hand that signed transfers for $10,000 every month, and how that hand finally learned to say enough. It all started 6 years ago when I was widowed. My husband Robert died of a massive heart attack one April afternoon. There was no time for goodbyes, no time for final words. One moment he was trimming the bushes in the yard, and the next he was gone, just like that. That cruel. I was left alone in that big house where we had raised Mark, where every corner held memories of a shared life. The walls echoed with laughter that no longer existed. The bed felt too wide. The silence became my only companion. Mark came to the funeral with Jessica. They had been married for just a year. She wore a tight black dress and high heels that clicked against the floor of the funeral home. I remember she hugged me and whispered words of comfort that sounded rehearsed, as if she had practiced them in front of the mirror. My son looked lost, with red eyes and a poorly knotted tie. He was my only son, my only close family after Robert's death. During the following months, I tried to get used to the loneliness. I sold the big house because maintaining it was impossible on my pension. I moved to a smaller apartment downtown. I tried to build a new routine. Morning walks, soap operas in the afternoon, occasional calls with a few friends who were still alive. But sadness accompanied me like a shadow stuck to my steps. That was when Mark proposed the idea. "Mom, why don't you come live with us? This house is big, we have plenty of space, and that way you won't be alone." He said it with such sweetness that I suspected nothing. Jessica nodded beside him with a smile that seemed genuine to me at the time. I thought it was the perfect solution. I would be close to my son. I would get to know my daughter-in-law better. Maybe grandchildren would arrive soon and I could help raise them like I had raised Mark. The idea filled me with hope for the first time in months. I moved into their house in June of that same year. At first, everything seemed to work out well. I had my own room on the second floor, with a window facing the yard and a private bathroom. I helped with the housework without being asked. I cooked the meals Mark loved as a kid. I cleaned. I ironed. I did the grocery shopping. I felt useful. I felt part of something again. Jessica worked at a clothing boutique and came home late most nights. Mark had a job at a logistics company that I never fully understood. Both of them complained constantly about money, the bills that were piling up, the unexpected expenses, the maxed-out credit cards. I would listen to these conversations from the kitchen while I prepared dinner and feel a pang of guilt in my chest. One day, Mark sat down with me in the living room. "Mom, I need to ask you for a favor. We're just going through a tough time with finances." Jessica has some debts from before we were married, and we're trying to get on top of it. Do you think you could help us out with something monthly? Just until we get stabilized." I looked at my son and saw the boy he had been. I saw his pleading eyes. I saw the shame on his face for having to ask his mother for money, and I could not refuse. "Of course, sweetie. How much do you need?" He mentioned a figure. $5,000 a month. It was more than half of my pension, but I thought it was temporary. I thought that in a few months, everything would be sorted out, and my son would be at ease again. So I agreed. I set up an automatic transfer from my account to theirs. On the 15th of every month, without fail. The first few months were manageable. I adjusted my personal expenses. I bought fewer clothes. I went out less. But I did not mind because I was helping my son. That was what mothers did. Sacrifice. Give without expecting anything in return. Then things started to change. It was gradual. So gradual that at first I did not notice. Jessica started talking to me differently. Her tone became sharper, more impatient. She would leave dirty dishes in the sink, expecting me to wash them. She would toss her clothes anywhere, knowing I would pick them up. When I spoke at the table, she would look at her phone with obvious disinterest. Mark said nothing. He never said anything. One day, Jessica asked me to increase the monthly help. "We need more, Eleanor. Things are getting more expensive. You could make it 8,000. I swallowed hard and agreed, even though it meant being left with barely the minimum for my own expenses. I thought it was my duty. I thought that was how I showed my love. But 8,000 was not enough. Months later, another conversation came. This time it was Mark who spoke, but the words sounded rehearsed, as if Jessica had written them for him. "Mom, we really need it to be 10,000. Just for a little while. I promise you. $10,000. Almost my entire pension. I would be left with just a few hundred for my personal things. Medication. Toiletries. An occasional treat." But I said yes again because I did not know how to say no to my son. Because mothers do not abandon. Because I thought that eventually, things would get better. They never got better. What did change was my place in that house. First, it was the room. Jessica said they needed to turn my room into an office for her, that her business was growing and she needed her own space. They offered me the room in the back, the one next to the laundry room. It was small, dark. It smelled like dampness. But I did not protest. I did not want to be a burden. Then it was the bathroom. The one that had been mine was now exclusively theirs. I had to use the guest bathroom on the ground floor. Every time I needed to shower at night, I had to go down the stairs. Every early morning when I got up to use the bathroom, I had to walk through the dark house, praying I would not trip. Then came the table. One night I came to the dining room, and my chair was gone. Jessica had bought new chairs, and there were only 4. One for her, one for Mark, one for Mia, who had been born by then, and one spare for guests. I had to eat in the kitchen, alone, with a plate balanced on the counter while I listened to their laughter from the dining room. And I still said nothing. I kept paying the $10,000 every month. I kept cleaning, cooking, taking care of Mia when they went out, being invisible, being convenient. I deserve more than this. That phrase appeared in my mind one morning while I was scrubbing the floor of the bathroom that was no longer mine. My knees creased with every movement. My hands smelled like bleach, and that phrase came like a whisper from somewhere deep in my consciousness. I deserve more than this, but I pushed it away immediately. I shoved it down as I had learned to do with so many other things. Because mothers do not complain. Because mothers endure. Memories of the past visited me more and more frequently, especially at night when I lay down in that narrow bed in the room next to the laundry. I would close my eyes and see Mark as a child. I saw his little hands clinging to my shirt. I saw his smile with his front teeth missing. I heard his crystal-clear laugh when I chased him around the yard of our old house. Mark had been a quiet baby. He slept for long hours, curled up against my chest. His fingers were so delicate that I was afraid of hurting them when I cut his nails. When he cried, I would rock him, singing songs my own mother had sung to me, and he would calm down. He always calmed down in my arms. I remember his first day of school. He wore a new uniform that was a little too big for him because I had bought it that way so it would last longer. He held on to my hand so tightly that his knuckles turned white. He did not want me to go. He did not want to be left alone among so many unknown children. But I knelt down to his level, dried his tears, and promised him I would come back for him, that I would always come back for him. And I always did. I came back for him after every school day. I came back for him when he got chickenpox and no other mother wanted their kids near him. I came back for him when he failed math and needed extra classes that we paid for with the money Robert earned working overtime. I came back for him when he had his first heartbreak at 16 and locked himself in his room for 3 days, refusing to talk to anyone except me. I was always there. Always. Robert worked long hours at a textile mill. He left before dawn and returned after the sun had set. His hands smelled like fabric and machine oil. He would come home tired, but never forgot to ask about Mark. How was school? If he had eaten well? If he needed anything? He was a good father, even though his schedule did not allow him to be present as much as he would have liked. I stayed home. I cooked. I cleaned. I managed the little money we had with the precision of a watchmaker. Every dollar counted. Every cent had a destination. But Mark never lacked for anything. Maybe he did not have the most expensive toys or designer clothes, but he had love. He had attention. He had a mother who would have given her life for him without a second thought. The afternoons were our special time. When Mark finished his homework, we would sit together on the living room sofa. Sometimes we watched television. Other times we just talked. He told me about his friends, his teachers, his dreams. He wanted to be an airplane pilot. Then he wanted to be a veterinarian. Then an architect. His dreams changed with the seasons, but I listened to all of them with the same attention. I told him he could be whatever he wanted, that I believed in him. On Sundays, we went to the park. The 3 of us, Robert, Mark, and me. We bought ice cream with the money I had saved during the week. Mark would run among the trees while Robert and I watched him from a bench. My husband would take my hand and squeeze it gently. "Look what we made," he would say. "Look at what a beautiful boy." And I would nod, feeling my heart expand inside my chest. Those memories sustained me now. In this house where I no longer had a place, in this life where I had become invisible, because the Mark I knew no longer existed. Or maybe he had always existed, but I had refused to see him. The boy who hugged me had turned into a man who would not even look me in the eye. The boy who cried when I left had become a man who did not notice my presence until he needed something. The boy who said I was the best mom in the world now allowed his wife to treat me as if I were less than nothing. And I kept looking for the boy in the man. I kept waiting for the day he would wake up and remember who had always been there, who had raised him, who had loved him unconditionally. But that day never came. The humiliations continued to escalate. Jessica began asking me to do increasingly degrading things, to wash her underwear by hand because the washing machine did not get it clean enough, to iron the sheets on her bed every 3rd day, to polish her shoes before she left for work. And I did it. I did it all without protest because I was afraid. Afraid they would kick me out, afraid of being alone again, afraid of losing my son forever. One day she came home with bags from an expensive store, new clothes, new shoes, a designer handbag that cost more than what I spent on food for 2 months. I knew because she left the receipt on the kitchen table. I saw it while I was cleaning. $2,500 for a single handbag. Meanwhile, I was wearing the same coat I had for 5 years. My shoes had worn out soles. My underwear had holes that I mended myself because I had no money to buy new ones. But Jessica had a $2,500 handbag, paid for with my pension, with my money, with my $10,000 a month. I could not sleep that night. I stared at the ceiling of the dark room next to the laundry. I listened to the constant drip of a poorly closed faucet. I listened to Jessica's footsteps on the floor above. I listened to my own ragged breathing as tears rolled into my ears. I don't need permission to start over. Another phrase? Another whisper from that place inside me that refused to die completely. But I did nothing with that phrase either. I let it float in the darkness until it dissolved like smoke. Mia was born when I had been living in that house for 2 years. She was the only true light in the midst of so much darkness. The first time I held her, I felt something inside me repair itself. Her eyes looked at me with the same trust that Mark had looked at me with so many years ago. Her freshly bathed baby smell, her soft skin, her little sighs as she slept against my chest. Jessica did not want to breastfeed. She said it would ruin her figure, so I prepared the bottles. I fed her at midnight when she cried from hunger. I changed her diapers. I rocked her until she fell asleep. Jessica only appeared for the photographs, for the social media posts, where she looked like the perfect mother. As Mia grew, she became my companion, my little accomplice. When she learned to walk, her first steps were towards me. When she learned to talk, one of her first words was Grandma. She looked for me when she was scared. She looked for me when she was sad. She looked for me when she wanted someone to truly listen to her. I told her stories before bed. Stories of princesses who did not need rescuing. Stories of brave women who faced dragons and won. She would listen to me with wide eyes, completely absorbed in every word, and when I finished, she would hug me with her little arms and say, "I love you, Grandma," and I felt it was all worth it, that all the humiliations were bearable if I could be near her. But Jessica soon ruined that too. She began to limit the time I spent with Mia. She said I was spoiling her, that I was teaching her bad habits, that she needed to learn to be independent. So she forbade me from entering her room after 8 o'clock at night. She forbade me from giving her sweets. She forbade me from taking her to the park without her explicit permission. Mia would cry when they separated her from me. She would reach her little arms out to me as Jessica dragged her upstairs, and I would stay downstairs with a shattered heart, unable to do anything. Mark still said nothing. He remained a silent spectator to everything that happened under his own roof. He would come home from work, eat in silence, watch television, and go to bed. He did not ask how I was. He did not ask if I needed anything. He did not notice that his daughter was crying for her grandmother. He did not notice that his wife treated me worse than a maid. Or maybe he did notice. Maybe he just did not care. The years passed like this, in a monotonous routine of daily humiliations. Waking up before everyone to make breakfast, cleaning the entire house while they worked, having food ready when they returned, washing their clothes, ironing their shirts, taking care of Mia when it was not convenient for them, and on the 15th of every month, without fail, transferring my $10,000 to their account. The day is coming when they will stop underestimating me. That phrase came one afternoon while I was folding laundry in the room by the laundry. I repeated it in a low voice. The day is coming, and something in my chest stirred, something that had been asleep for far too long. It was a Tuesday afternoon when everything truly began to change. I was cleaning Mark and Jessica's room while they were at work. They had not asked me to, but I did it anyway. I always did. As I dusted the dresser, my hand accidentally brushed against an envelope that was half hidden between some magazines. The envelope fell to the floor, and papers spilled out. Bills, bank statements, receipts. I did not mean to look. I truly did not. But my eyes fell on one of the papers, and what I saw made my hands freeze. It was a credit card statement, in Jessica's name, and the amount of the debt made my hands tremble. $18,000. But it was not just the amount. It was what the money had been spent on. Expensive restaurants, spas, hair salons, designer clothing stores, beach trips I did not know they had taken, luxury hotels, bottles of wine that cost more than I spent on food in a week. I kept looking at the other papers. There were more cards, more debts, all in her name. They totaled more than $40,000. $40,000 in whims and luxuries, while I lived in a room next to the laundry, eating the leftovers from their dinners. My legs gave out. I sat on the edge of their bed, the bed that I made every morning, the bed with Egyptian cotton sheets that I ironed. And I felt something break inside me. It was not dramatic. It was not loud. It was like a silent crack in a wall that has been bearing too much weight for too long. My $10,000 a month were not paying for the household's food. They were not paying the utility bills. They were not maintaining a home. They were financing the lifestyle of a woman who treated me like garbage. They were paying for her designer bags while I mended my old underwear. They were paying for her romantic getaways while I slept listening to the drip of a broken faucet. I put the papers back exactly as I had found them. I left the room on shaky legs. I went down the stairs, clinging to the railing because I felt like I would fall at any moment. I reached my laundry room and sat on the bed. The tears did not come. There was just a huge, cold emptiness in my chest. For years, I had told myself I was helping my son, that I was contributing to his well-being, that I was being a good mother. But it was not true. I was being a fool, an idiot, a woman too scared of being alone to see the truth right in front of her eyes. That night, Jessica came home with more shopping bags, new shoes, a red dress that must have cost a fortune. She dropped them in the entryway, expecting me to pick them up and put them away in her closet. Like always, like every day. But this time, something was different. I looked at those shoes on the floor. I looked at Jessica going up the stairs without even acknowledging my presence. And I felt anger, a quiet, deep anger that came from a place I did not know existed inside me. I picked up the shoes. I took them to her room. I placed them in her closet next to the other 20 pairs she already had. I closed the door carefully, and as I walked back to my room, I whispered under my breath, "I didn't come for revenge. I came to take back what is mine." I did not know what that meant yet. I did not have a plan, but those words felt true. They felt like a promise I was making to myself. The following days were strange. I continued with my usual routine, but something had changed inside me. I observed more. I noticed more. I saw things I had deliberately ignored before. I saw how Jessica talked on the phone with her friends, bragging about her latest purchase while I scrubbed the floor at her feet. I saw how Mark avoided my gaze when she gave me orders as if I were her servant. I saw how Mia looked for me with her eyes every time I entered a room, as if I were the only person in that house who truly saw her. One afternoon, Mia came down to the kitchen while I was making dinner. She had tears in her eyes. She sat on one of the stools and looked at me without saying anything. I stopped what I was doing and went over to her. "What's wrong, my love?" "Mom says you can't tell me stories before bed anymore. She says I'm too old for that now." She was 11 years old at the time. 11 years is not too old for stories. It is not too old for a grandmother's affection. But I did not say any of that. I just hugged her as she cried against my chest. And I felt that quiet anger grow a little more. "Why is Mom like that with you, Grandma?" she whispered. "I heard how she talked to you yesterday. It's not fair." The words slipped out of my mouth before I could stop them. Words I should never have said to a child, but they came out anyway. "Sometimes people forget to be kind. But don't you worry, my love. Everything is going to be okay." She looked at me with those big, intelligent eyes. She was more perceptive than Jessica thought. She saw more than she should have to see at her age. "Are you going to leave, Grandma?" The question hit me like a punch. Was I going to leave? I had not even really considered the possibility. Where would I go? I had no money saved. My entire pension went to that monthly transfer. I had nothing. "No, my love. I'm not going anywhere." But as I said it, something in my mind began to move. To calculate, to plan. If I stopped transferring that $10,000 each month, in a few months, I could save enough to rent a room somewhere. A small place. A place just for me, where I would not have to sleep next to the laundry room, where I would not have to ask permission to use the bathroom, where I would not have to watch Jessica parade around in expensive clothes bought with my money. But Mark, my son, how could I leave him? How could I cut that last remaining bond with him? Except the bond was already broken. I was just refusing to see it. That night, I could not sleep again. I stared at the cracked ceiling of the laundry room. The dampness had left dark stains in the corners. The smell of detergent was constant. The streetlight came through the small, dirty window. And I thought about the room I had when I first moved into this house. The room with the window to the yard, with its own bathroom, with a comfortable bed and a spacious closet. I thought about how I had allowed them to take that room from me. And then the bathroom. And then my place at the table. Little concessions I had made, one after another, without realizing they were erasing me. That they were turning me into a ghost in a house where I should have been family. The humiliations were no longer subtle. Jessica had stopped pretending a long time ago. She yelled at me if the food was not exactly how she wanted it. She yelled at me if her clothes were not ironed perfectly. She yelled at me if Mia spent too much time with me. And Mark remained seated on the sofa, looking at his phone as if nothing was happening. One Sunday morning, I came down to the kitchen and found a note on the counter. It was from Jessica. It said they had gone out for breakfast, the three of them, Mark, Jessica, and Mia. They had not told me. They had not invited me. They had just left, leaving me a note as if I were the neighbor watching the house. I made myself a coffee and sat alone in the kitchen. The silence was crushing. I looked around that house that was not mine, that furniture I cleaned but could not use, that table where I no longer had a place. And something inside me said, enough is enough. I went upstairs. I went into Mark and Jessica's room. I went straight to the place where I had found the papers last time. They were still there. I took them all. I took them to my room, and I read them, one by one, carefully. $43,000 in debt, all on unnecessary luxuries, all being paid off with minimum payments while my money was being used to keep buying more things. A vicious cycle that was never going to end, because as long as I continued to be their inexhaustible source of money, they would have no reason to change. I picked up my phone. I opened the banking app. I looked at the automatic transfer scheduled for the 15th of each month. $10,000. My finger hovered over the cancel option. I just had to press it. I just had to take that step. But fear paralyzed me. What if Mark hated me? What if they kicked me out of the house immediately? What if I lost Mia forever? I closed the app. I put the phone away. I was not ready yet. But something had begun. A seed of rebellion had germinated in my chest, and I knew it was only a matter of time before it grew too big to ignore. The next week passed in a strange haze. I kept doing everything that was expected of me. I cleaned, I cooked, I obeyed. But inside, something had changed irrevocably. It was as if a part of me had woken up after years of hibernation and was now observing everything with new eyes. I started writing things down. I do not know exactly why I did it. Maybe I needed proof that I was not exaggerating, that the humiliations were real. I took an old notebook I found in the back of one of my drawers and started writing. Monday. Jessica yelled at me because the rice was too soft. She threw the plate in the sink and left without eating. Mark said nothing. Tuesday. I found my toothbrush in the trash. Jessica says it was taking up too much space in the guest bathroom. I had to buy a new one with the little money I have left. Wednesday. Mia wanted to help me dry the dishes. Jessica yanked her by the arm and told her not to do servant's work. Each entry was a small blow, but together they formed a pattern impossible to ignore. This was not a family. This was abuse disguised as cohabitation. My phrases of resistance began to appear more frequently. I wrote them in the margins of the notebook. I repeated them silently while I scrubbed floors or folded laundry. I deserve more than this. I don't need permission to start over. The day is coming when they will stop underestimating me. I didn't come for revenge. I came to take back what is mine. Each phrase was like a brick, building a wall of dignity that had been crumbled for too long. On Thursday of that week, something happened that accelerated everything. I was at the grocery store buying food for the house with the few dollars I had left after the monthly transfer. I was in the cleaning products aisle when I heard a familiar voice. Eleanor? I turned around, and there was Carol. I had not seen her since before I moved in with Mark. We had been close friends when Robert was still alive. Our husbands worked together at the mill. We met for coffee. We shared recipes. We laughed together about things I could not even remember now. Carol, what a surprise to see you. But she was looking at me with concern. Her eyes scanned my worn-out clothes. My hair, which I no longer styled with care. My hands, rough and red from so much washing and cleaning, and I saw something in her face that broke my heart. Pity. Eleanor, are you okay? I haven't heard from you in years. I'm fine. I'm living with my son now, with Mark and his family. I said the words with a forced smile. But Carol was not stupid. She knew me too well to believe that superficial lie. Do you have time for a coffee? There's a coffee shop nearby. I'd love to catch up. I looked at my shopping cart. I looked at my watch. Jessica expected dinner to be ready at 7 o'clock sharp. But something in Carol's expression made me say yes. I needed to talk to someone. To anyone who saw me as a person and not as a useful tool. We left our carts at the store, promising to return. We walked the 2 blocks to the coffee shop. It was a small, cozy place. Carol ordered 2 coffees, and we sat by the window. The soft afternoon light illuminated her kind face. Now tell me the truth. How are you, really? And then, without planning it, it all came out. The words flooded out of me like water from a broken dam. I told her about the room next to the laundry, about losing my place at the table, about the $10,000 a month, about Jessica's secret debts, about the daily humiliations, about how my own son had stopped seeing me. Carol listened without interrupting. Her eyes filled with tears as I spoke. When I finished, she took my hands in hers. Eleanor, that's not right. None of that is right. You are his mother. You deserve respect. You deserve dignity. I know, but I'm scared, Carol. I'm scared of being alone again. And you're not alone now? Isn't living in that house, surrounded by people who treat you like that, worse than loneliness? Her words hit me with the force of truth. She was right. I was completely alone in a house full of people. I was more isolated now than when I lived in my small apartment after Robert's death. You have to get out of there. You have to get your life back. I don't have any money. It all goes to that transfer. Then cancel the transfer. It's your money. It's your pension. You worked your whole life for it. But it's my son. A son who treats you like you're worthless. Forgive me for putting it so bluntly, but someone has to. This is abuse. And you're allowing it out of fear. Carol was not being cruel. She was being honest. And I needed to hear that honesty from someone outside of that sick house where everything had become normalized. Look, I have a spare room in my house. My son went off to college, and his room is empty. You could stay there while you get back on your feet. No rent, just until you save enough for your own place. You would do that for me? We're friends, Eleanor. And friends don't abandon each other when they're needed most. I cried. Right there in that coffee shop, in front of strangers, I cried like I had not cried in years. Carol got up and hugged me. And for the first time, in a long time, I felt seen. I felt like someone cared. I felt like I was not completely alone in this world. After that coffee with Carol, I returned to Mark's house with something new inside me. Hope. Small and fragile, but real. There was a way out. I had options. I was not trapped forever in that laundry room. That night, after everyone had gone to sleep, I took out my notebook again, and I wrote a new sentence. There is a light at the end of this tunnel, and I'm going to walk towards it, even if I have to do it alone. The days after my meeting with Carol were different. I kept doing the same chores. I kept living in the same miserable room next to the laundry. But something inside me had changed. A spark of determination that had not existed before. Knowing I had a place to go, knowing that someone valued me, gave me a strength I did not know I possessed. I started doing calculations. If I canceled the $10,000 transfer, in 2 months I could save $20,000. Enough to move into my own place after spending some time at Carol's. Enough to buy basic furniture, enough to start over. But every time I opened the banking app and looked at that scheduled transfer, fear paralyzed me. It was not fear of being without money. It was fear of Mark's reaction. It was fear of losing my son for good. Because as long as I kept giving him money, as long as I remained useful, I still had an excuse to be near him. If I cut that financial tie, what would I have left? Carol called me every 2 days. Have you made the decision yet? She would ask, with that firm gentleness only a true friend can have. And I would tell her not yet, that I needed a little more time, that I would do it soon. She did not pressure me. She just reminded me that the offer still stood, that her door was open whenever I was ready. One afternoon, while I was cleaning the living room, I heard Jessica talking on the phone upstairs. Her voice carried clearly through the air vent. I did not mean to eavesdrop, but the words caught me. Yeah, it's unbelievable. I still don't get how the old woman hasn't figured it out. 10,000 a month, and she doesn't even ask what we spend it on. It's like having an ATM living in your house. Laughter. Jessica was laughing, and then she continued. The best part is, Mark is so afraid of her being alone that he'll never tell her we don't need her money. Well, we do need it, but not for what she thinks. Last month, I bought those diamond earrings I showed you. She thinks she's helping with the groceries. It's pathetic. I sat down on the sofa I had just cleaned. My legs would not hold me. Pathetic. That was what she called me. And the worst part was that Mark knew. Mark knew exactly what was happening. He was not an innocent bystander. He was an accomplice. Active. Aware. Something inside me hardened in that moment. It was not just pain anymore. It was rage. A clean, clear rage that burned away all the fear I had been carrying. I went up the stairs with firm steps. I entered my laundry room. I took my phone. I opened the banking app. And this time, my finger did not tremble when I pressed the Cancel Transfer button. A message appeared on the screen. Are you sure you want to cancel this recurring transfer? I pressed Confirm. It was done. There would be no more $10,000 on the 15th of next month. It was over. I took a deep breath. My hands were shaking, but not from fear. They were shaking from liberation. I had just taken my life back. I had just reclaimed my dignity. And even though I did not know exactly what would come next, I knew I had done the right thing. That night, during dinner, no one noticed anything different. Jessica complained that the chicken was too dry. Mark ate in silence, looking at his phone. Mia smiled at me from her place at the table. I ate standing up in the kitchen as usual, but this time with my head held high, because I knew something they did not. I knew their world was about to collapse, and they did not even see it coming. For the next few days, I acted as I always had. I cleaned. I cooked. I obeyed. But inside, I was planning. I called Carol and told her yes, that I accepted her offer, that I would move into her house in 2 weeks. She shouted with joy on the phone and told me she would start getting the room ready for me. I began to pack my things in secret. I did not have much. A few changes of worn-out clothes, old photographs, the notebook where I had been writing, my personal documents. Everything fit into 2 small bags. 68 years of life reduced to 2 bags. But I felt like I was gaining more than I was leaving behind. Mia caught me one afternoon while I was putting things into one of the bags. Are you leaving, Grandma? Her voice was small, scared. I sat on the bed and motioned for her to sit with me. I took her hands in mine. Yes, my love, I am. Why? Is it because of Mom? Because of how she treats you. She was so smart, so perceptive. There was no point in lying to her. Your mom and I don't get along, and this house isn't a healthy place for me anymore. I need to take care of myself. But I'm going to miss you so much, and I'll miss you more than you can imagine. But I'm not going to disappear. I'm going to give you my new phone number. You can call me whenever you want. And when you're older, you can come visit me. Do you promise? I promise. I hugged her as she cried against my chest, and I felt my heart break a little. But I knew I could not stay just for Mia. I could not sacrifice my mental health and my dignity just to maintain this connection, because eventually it would destroy me. And then I would be no good to anyone, not to her, and not to myself. The 15th arrived. I was in the kitchen preparing lunch when I heard Jessica scream from upstairs. Mark! Mark! The transfer didn't come through. Hurried footsteps, doors opening, raised voices, and then the 2 of them came running down the stairs toward the kitchen where I was. Jessica had her phone in her hand, showing the screen to Mark. The money didn't arrive. Your mother didn't make the transfer. Mark looked at me for the first time in weeks. Really looked at me. Mom, did you forget to make the transfer this month? His voice tried to sound casual, but I heard the barely contained panic underneath. I didn't forget. There was a silence. Jessica and Mark looked at each other. Then they looked at me. What do you mean you didn't forget? Then do it now. It's already past the 15th. We have payments due. I put down the knife I was using to cut vegetables. I wiped my hands on my apron. I looked them both directly in the eye. I canceled the transfer. I'm not giving you any more money. Jessica's jaw dropped. Mark turned pale. What do you mean you're not giving us any more money? Mom, you have to be kidding. You're going to put us out on the street. We have debts. We have a daughter. You can't do this to us. His voice was rising, but I remained calm. Calmer than I had been in years. I am 68 years old, and I live in a room next to the laundry. I eat standing up in the kitchen because I don't have a place at my own family's table. I have been giving you $10,000 every month for years, and that money isn't going to food or bills. It's going to designer handbags and expensive shoes and trips I didn't even know you were taking. Jessica took a step toward me, fury in her eyes. That's my private life. You had no right to go through my things. But I did not back down. I did not shrink as I would have before. And you have no right to use my pension to finance your whims while you treat me as if I'm less than nothing. It's over, Jessica. It's all over. Mark ran his hands through his hair. I saw genuine panic in his face. And in that moment, I understood that Carol was right. My son did not love me. My son just needed me. Or, more specifically, he needed my money. Mom, please. We can talk about this. If there's something bothering you, we can fix it. But you can't just cut off the money like this. It's not fair. Not fair? You want to talk about what's fair, son? My voice came out firmer than I expected. Mark took a step back, as if my words were a physical push. Jessica crossed her arms over her chest with that look of superiority I knew so well. But this time, it did not intimidate me. This time, I had the power. You want to talk about what's fair? Fine, let's talk. Is it fair that you took away my room to turn it into an office that Jessica uses to store clothes? Is it fair that you took away my place at the table? Is it fair that you treat me like a maid instead of the mother and grandmother that I am? Mom, you're exaggerating. Nobody treats you badly here. Mark tried to sound reasonable, but his voice was shaking. Jessica remained silent for the first time since I had known her. Her eyes looked at me with a pure hatred she was not even trying to hide anymore. Exaggerating? Last night your wife called me pathetic. I heard her on the phone, laughing at me. Laughing that I'm so stupid I keep giving you money without asking what you spend it on. Mark looked at Jessica. She looked away. And in that silent exchange, I saw the whole truth. He knew. He had always known. All this time, I had wanted to believe that my son was innocent, that he was just caught between his wife and his mother. But it was not true. He had chosen. And he had not chosen me. Something broke inside me in that moment. Not with pain, but with clarity. The boy I had raised no longer existed. Maybe he never really had. Maybe I had invented a version of my son that was never real. And now, I was finally seeing the man in front of me. A weak man. A selfish man. A man who allowed his wife to humiliate his own mother just to keep the peace in his marriage. We're going to be evicted if we don't pay the mortgage this month. Do you understand that? Do you understand you're going to put us out on the street? Mark's voice sounded desperate, but I no longer felt the need to rescue him. I no longer felt it was my responsibility to fix his problems. You have 2 salaries. 2 working adults. If you can't pay your mortgage, it's because you're living beyond your means. And that is not my problem. Jessica finally spoke. Her voice was venomous. Of course it's not your problem, because you only think about yourself. You're selfish, a selfish old woman who doesn't care about her own family. I laughed. It was a short, dry, but sincere laugh, because Jessica's words were so absurd that I could only laugh. I'm the selfish one? I have been giving you most of my pension for years. I have been cleaning your house, cooking your meals, taking care of your daughter, and all this time, I've lived in a laundry room, being treated like garbage. But I'm the selfish one. You helped us because you wanted to. Nobody forced you. She was right about that. Nobody had forced me. I had chosen to give and give and give until there was nothing left of me. But that choice had been motivated by fear and by the hope that I would eventually be valued. And now I understood. That was never going to happen. You're right. Nobody forced me. And now I'm choosing to stop. I'm choosing to take my life back. I'm choosing to leave this house. The words came out before I could think them. But as soon as I said them, I knew they were right. I could not stay here. Not after this. Not after seeing their faces when I told them there was no more money. Not after realizing that the only thing they cared about was my pension. Leave? Where are you going to go? You have nothing. You have no one. Jessica smiled cruelly. But her smile did not hurt me as it would have before. I have friends. I have options. I have dignity, which is more than I can say for you. Mark stepped toward me. For a moment, I thought he was going to hug me, that he was going to apologize, that he would finally see what he had been doing to me. But instead, he said, "If you leave, don't come back, and don't expect to see Mia ever again." His words were designed to hurt me, to make me back down, to make me beg. But they did not work anymore, because I had reached a point where my own peace of mind was worth more than anything else. If that's your decision, I'll have to accept it. But one day Mia's going to grow up, and she's going to ask her own questions. She's going to ask why her grandmother disappeared, and you're going to have to give her answers. I took off my apron. I folded it carefully and left it on the kitchen counter. Then I headed toward my laundry room. Jessica was yelling something at me from the kitchen, but I was not listening to her words anymore. It was just noise. Noise that I would soon leave behind forever. I reached my room and closed the door. My hands were shaking, but not from fear. They were shaking from adrenaline, from liberation. I called Carol. "Can I come today? I can't be here one more day." Her answer was immediate. "Come right now. I'm waiting for you." I finished packing my 2 bags. I looked around the miserable room where I had spent the last few years. The damp walls, the dirty window, the narrow, uncomfortable bed. And I felt not one bit of nostalgia. I only felt relief to be leaving it behind. I heard a soft knock on the door. It was Mia. Her eyes were red from crying. "Are you really leaving, Grandma?" "Yes, my love. I really am." I hugged her tight. I breathed in the smell of her strawberry shampoo. I memorized the feeling of her arms around my neck, because I did not know when I would feel it again. "I love you. Don't you ever forget that. No matter what your parents tell you about me, remember that I love you and that this has nothing to do with you. I love you too, Grandma, and I'm going to call you. I promise." I let her go, even though every part of me wanted to keep holding her. I grabbed my 2 bags and walked out of the room. I walked through the living room I had cleaned 1,000 times. I passed the kitchen where I had cooked 1,000 meals. I reached the front door. Mark was standing there. For a moment, our eyes met. I saw something in his gaze. Regret? Guilt? Or was I just projecting what I wanted to see? "Goodbye, son." He did not answer. He just stepped aside to let me pass. I walked out of that house with my 2 bags and my newly recovered dignity. The afternoon sun hit my face. The fresh air filled my lungs. And with every step I took away from that door, I felt myself getting lighter, as if I had been carrying an invisible weight for years and had finally allowed myself to set it down. I took a taxi to Carol's house. During the ride, I looked out the window, watching the city go by. And I thought about all the times I had left that house only to buy groceries or run errands, always with the urgency to return. Always with the fear that they would be annoyed if I took too long. But now there was no urgency. Now there was no fear. There was only freedom. Carol was waiting for me at her front door. When she saw me arrive, she ran to me and hugged me so tightly I could barely breathe. "You did it. I'm so proud of you." And I cried. I cried like I had not cried in years. Not from sadness, but from relief. From gratitude. From the overwhelming feeling of being seen and valued after so much time of being invisible. Carol's house was small but cozy. It smelled like cinnamon and fresh brewed coffee. The walls were painted a warm cream color, and there were family photographs everywhere. She showed me the room that would be mine. It was simple. A single bed with a floral comforter, a small desk by the window, a narrow closet, but big enough for my few belongings. And it had a window that looked out onto a garden with trees and birds. Natural light, fresh air, it's perfect. And I meant it. After the dark room next to the laundry, this was a palace. That night, Carol made dinner for both of us. Roast chicken with vegetables. Nothing elaborate, but made with love. We sat together at her small kitchen table, and I realized something. It had been years since I had sat at a table to eat. Years since I had shared a meal with someone who actually wanted my company. Tell me what happened. What finally made you decide? I told her everything. From the conversation I had overheard, where Jessica called me pathetic, to the moment I canceled the transfer. From the confrontation in the kitchen to Mark's threat about never seeing Mia again. Carol listened without interrupting, nodding her head from time to time, her eyes full of understanding. You did the right thing. I know it doesn't feel like it right now, but in time, you'll see it was the best decision of your life. What if Mark never speaks to me again? What if I lose Mia forever? If Mark truly loved you, he never would have let things get to this point. And as for Mia, that girl loves you. When she's older, she'll understand. She'll seek out the truth. Kids always do. That night, for the first time in years, I slept without the noise of the laundry, without the smell of dampness, without the weight of feeling invisible in my own existence. I slept deeply and woke up to the sun streaming through the window. The first few days at Carol's house were an adjustment. She worked part-time at a library, so in the mornings I was alone. At first, I did not know what to do with so much silence, with so much peace. I would sit by the window in my room with a cup of tea and just watch the yard, the birds coming and going, the leaves moving in the wind. Simple things I had forgotten existed. Carol never treated me like a burden. She never made me feel like I owed her anything. We shared the household chores naturally. I cooked sometimes, she cooked others. We cleaned together on the weekends. And in the evenings we sat and watched television or just talked. One afternoon, about a week after I had left, my phone rang. It was an unknown number. I hesitated before answering, but something made me do it. Mom? It was Mark. His voice sounded different, smaller, less certain. It's me. There was a long silence. I heard his breathing on the other end of the line. I need to talk to you. Things are bad here, really bad. Without your money, we can't cover the expenses. The bank is threatening to foreclose on the house. Jessica is desperate. Please, Mom. I just need you to come back, and for us to go back to how things were. I felt a pang in my chest, but it was no longer the pang of guilt. It was something different. It was pity. Pity for my son, who still did not understand anything. I'm not coming back, Mark. But we're your family. You can't just abandon us like this. You abandoned me first. You abandoned me emotionally and psychologically every single day for years. And I stayed because I was afraid. But I'm not afraid anymore. You're being selfish. You're only thinking of yourself and not about Mia. She asks about you every day. She cries at night because she misses her bedtime stories. His words were designed to manipulate me, to make me feel guilty. And part of me did feel guilty about Mia. But the stronger part, the part that had finally awakened, knew I could not go back. If Mia misses me, you can bring her to visit. But I am not going back to that house. And I am not giving you any more money. Then you're just like everyone else. When things get tough, you just run away. I'm not running away. I'm saving myself. There's a difference. I hung up before he could respond. My hands were shaking, but I felt strong. I had held my ground. I had stood firm. And even though it hurt, I knew it was the right thing to do. Carol came into the room and found me crying. Was that him? I nodded, unable to speak. She sat next to me and put her arm around my shoulders. He's going to try to make you feel guilty. It's what people do when they lose control over you. But you're stronger than that. You've already proven it. Over the next few weeks, Mark called several more times, sometimes begging, sometimes threatening, sometimes trying to guilt-trip me by talking about Mia. But I did not give in. Every call hurt, but every time I hung up, I felt a little stronger, a little more certain of my decision. Meanwhile, my life was beginning to take shape again. With the $10,000 from my pension intact, I had more money than I had in years. I bought new clothes. Not expensive clothes like Jessica's, but clothes that fit well and made me feel dignified. I went to the doctor for the first time in years for checkups I had been putting off. I started walking in the nearby park in the mornings. Carol introduced me to her group of friends, women our age who met on Thursdays for coffee and conversation. At first, I felt out of place. I had forgotten how to be social, how to talk about things that were not other people's needs. But slowly, I began to open up, and I discovered that I had things to say, opinions, thoughts, a voice that had been silenced for far too long. One of those women, Susan, told me she had gone through something similar with her daughter. Years of emotional abuse, years of giving without receiving anything in return, and she had finally had to walk away to save herself. People don't understand that abuse doesn't always come with fists, she said. Sometimes it comes with words, with silences, with the slow dismantling of your dignity until you don't even recognize the person you were. Her words resonated deeply with me, because that was exactly what I had lived through, a slow, methodical dismantling of who I was until I became just a function, a source of money, a pair of hands to clean and cook. But now I was rebuilding myself, piece by piece, day by day. A month after I left, I received a text message from an unknown number. It was Mia. She had borrowed a friend's phone to write to me. "Grandma, I miss you so much. Mom and Dad fight all the time now. Dad says it's your fault, but I know it's not true. I know they treated you badly. I'm so sorry. I wish I could see you." I cried, reading that message. My granddaughter, my little Mia, who was not so little anymore, who saw more than her parents thought. I wrote back, telling her I missed her too, that I loved her. That one day, when she was older, we could see each other. That night, I told Carol about the message. She took my hands in hers. "That girl is going to be okay. She has your strength in her. You may not see it now, but one day she'll remember your example. She'll remember that her grandmother chose her dignity over her fear, and that will teach her that she can do it too." After 2 months of living with Carol, I started looking for my own place. I had saved enough for the security deposit and the first few months' rent on a small apartment. Carol insisted I was not in a hurry, that I could stay as long as I needed. But I knew I needed my own space. I needed to prove to myself that I could do it alone. I found an apartment in an older building, but well-maintained, a single room with an integrated kitchen and a full bathroom. It had a large window that overlooked the street. It was not luxurious, but it was mine. Completely mine. The day I signed the lease, I felt something I had not experienced in years. Pride. Pride in myself, in what I had accomplished, in the strength I had found when I thought I had none left. I walked out of the landlord's office with the keys in my hand and walked down the street feeling like I was floating. Carol helped me move. I did not have much to move. My 2 original bags, plus some clothes I had bought, and a few personal items. But when we walked into the empty apartment, I felt overwhelmed by the possibilities. This was my space, my walls, my floor. No one could take it from me. No one could make me feel like I did not deserve to be here. We went together to buy basic furniture, a bed, a small table with 2 chairs, a used but comfortable armchair, pots and pans, plates and silverware. Building a home from scratch at 68 was strange, but also liberating. Every item I chose was mine. Every decision was mine. I no longer had to ask for permission. I no longer had to adapt to other people's tastes. The first night I slept in my own apartment, I woke up several times, not from noise, but from the silence, a silence so complete and peaceful that my body did not recognize it. I would get up and walk around the small space just to confirm it was real, that this was not a dream, that I had truly gotten my life back. Days turned into weeks. I established a routine that was entirely my own. I got up early and made coffee. I ate breakfast sitting by the window, watching people pass by. I went for walks in the park. I came back and read books I had wanted to read for years but never had time for. In the afternoons, I visited Carol or met up with her group of friends. In the evenings, I cooked for myself. Simple meals, but made with self-love. I started writing more in my notebook. It was no longer just lists of humiliations or phrases of resistance. Now I wrote about my day, about the small things that made me happy, The taste of coffee in the morning. The smell of flowers in the park. The feeling of the sun on my face. Things that for years I had been too unhappy to notice. 3 months after I moved into my apartment, I got another call from Mark. This time his voice sounded different, more broken, more real. "Mom, we lost the house. The bank foreclosed. We're moving into a much smaller apartment. Jessica is furious. She says it's all your fault. But I think she's right about one thing. We never should have treated you the way we did." It was the closest thing to an apology I had received from him. It was not enough. It was not even close to being enough. But it was something. "I'm sorry you lost the house. But the decisions you two made led you to that point. Not me. I know. I know that now. I see how Jessica was spending. I see how I let it all happen. And I see how we treated you. Mia asks me why her grandma left. And I don't know what to tell her, because the truth is shameful. The truth is always better than a lie, son, even when it's shameful. Could you ever forgive me?" The question took me by surprise. I took a deep breath before answering. "I don't know, maybe someday. But right now, I'm just trying to heal. To rebuild what was broken inside me during those years. I understand. Is it okay if I call you every now and then? Not to ask for money, just to, I don't know, to try and get some of what we lost back. You can try, but I'm not promising anything." We hung up, and I sat in my armchair, looking out the window. Something had loosened in my chest. It was not forgiveness. Not yet. But maybe it was the beginning of something, or maybe not. Time would tell. Mia started texting me more often. Short messages from her friends' phones. She told me about school, about her friends, about how hard it was living in a small apartment after having a house, about how she missed her room, and how she missed her grandma. I always wrote back. I told her about my apartment, about my walks in the park, about the books I was reading. I sent her pictures of the flowers I had bought to decorate my window, small connections that kept our bond alive despite the physical distance. One day, Carol proposed something unexpected. Her library needed volunteers for the children's reading program. "Would you be interested?" she asked. At first, I hesitated. I had spent so long being just a shadow that the idea of being in front of children, reading them stories, seemed overwhelming. But something in me said yes, that I needed to try. My first day as a volunteer was terrifying. A group of 10 children sat in a semicircle, looking at me expectantly. I took the book I had chosen and began to read. My voice trembled at first. But as I read, as I saw their little faces absorbed in the story, something woke up in me. I remembered all the times I had read to Mark when he was little, all the times I had read to Mia before Jessica forbade me, and my voice became stronger, more confident. The children clapped when I finished. A little girl came up and hugged my legs, saying, "Thank you, ma'am. I liked that a lot." And I felt my heart fill with something warm and golden. Purpose, belonging, value. I started going to the library 3 times a week. I became the favorite volunteer for many of the children. I learned their names, their favorite stories, their little quirks, and they gave me something I had lost. They gave me a reason to get up each day with enthusiasm. They gave me the feeling that I still had so much to offer the world. One afternoon, 6 months after I had left Mark's house, I was in the park sitting on my favorite bench when I saw a familiar figure walking toward me. It was Mia. She was taller. Her hair was longer. But it was her, without a doubt. I ran to her, and we hugged in the middle of the path. I cried. She cried. People walked past us, but I did not care. "How did you get here?" I told Dad I needed to come see you. We argued a lot, but he finally agreed. "He's waiting in the car over there." I looked where she was pointing and saw Mark's car parked in the distance. He was sitting in the driver's seat, looking toward us. "Tell me everything. How are you? How is school?" We sat on the bench, and Mia talked for an hour. She told me about her new school, about how they did not fight as much at home anymore because they had no money to spend, about how Jessica had to get a second job, about how Dad was different, quieter, more thoughtful. He says he made a really big mistake with you, that he wishes he could turn back time. Apologies don't turn back time, but they can start to heal the wounds. Do you think you'll ever be able to forgive them? I looked at my granddaughter, her eyes full of hope, and I gave her the most honest answer I could. I don't know, my love. But what I do know is that I am okay, that I am happy, and that I love you more than words can say. I love you too, Grandma, and I'm proud of you. I know what you did was brave, even if Mom says otherwise. Those words, coming from her, meant more than Mia could ever imagine. They meant my example had not been in vain, that she had seen my strength and recognized it as something valuable. After Mia left that day, I sat on the park bench for a long time. The sun was beginning to set, painting the sky in oranges and pinks, and I thought about the entire journey I had taken, from that dark room next to the laundry to this bench in the park where I could breathe freely. From the invisible woman who scrubbed floors and accepted humiliations in silence to the woman I was now, a woman who had reclaimed her voice, her dignity, her life. It had not been easy. There were nights when the loneliness weighed on me like a stone in my chest. Nights when I missed Mia so much it hurt physically. Nights when I wondered if I had done the right thing. But even on those dark nights, I never regretted it, because I knew that staying would have been worse. Staying would have been a slow death, and I had chosen to live. The following months brought more changes. Mark started calling me regularly, not to ask for money, not to manipulate me, just to talk. At first, our conversations were tense and superficial, but slowly, we began to have more honest exchanges. He told me about his struggles, about how he was learning to live with less, about how his relationship with Jessica was changing now that they did not have my money as a cushion. One day, he asked if he could come visit. Just him, without Jessica. I hesitated before answering, but I finally agreed. When he knocked on my apartment door, I felt nerves I had not anticipated. I opened it, and there was my son. He looked thinner, more tired, older than I remembered. We went inside and sat in my small living room. The silence was awkward at first. "Your apartment is nice, Mom. Small but cozy." "Thank you. It's enough for me." More silence. And then Mark started to talk. Really talk. I don't know where to start. I've practiced this 1,000 times in my head, but now that I'm here, I can't find the right words. What we did to you. It was unforgivable. I let it all happen. Every humiliation. Every bit of disrespect. I saw it, but it was easier to ignore it than to confront it, because confronting it meant admitting that I had chosen Jessica over you. And that truth was too shameful. I listened without interrupting. I let the words spill out of him like water from a cracked dam. I thought that as long as we had you around, as long as you kept giving us money, everything was fine. I didn't see that we were destroying you. Or maybe I did see it, and I just didn't want to admit it. And when you left and cut off the money at first, I just felt anger. Anger that you were leaving us in a difficult time. But later, when we had to face the consequences of our decisions, I started to understand. His eyes filled with tears. Tears he did not shed when I left. Tears that were months too late. I understood that you had been paying for our luxuries, for our irresponsibility. And all the while, you were living in a horrible room, eating standing up in the kitchen. We treated you worse than an employee. And I allowed it because it was comfortable, because your money made my life easier. And what's different now, son? What guarantee do I have that if I get close again, I won't end up in the same place? You have no guarantee, and I'm not asking you to come back. I'm just asking you to give me a chance to try and be the son I should have been all along. Not for money, not for convenience. Just because you're my mother, and you deserve respect. His words sounded sincere, but I had learned to be cautious, to protect the peace that had cost me so much to build. I appreciate your honesty, but I need time. I need to see that these changes are real and not just words motivated by guilt. I understand, and I'm going to prove it to you, even if it takes me years. Mark left after an hour, and I sat in my armchair, processing the conversation. I did not know if I could ever fully forgive him. Maybe not. But at least now there was honesty between us. And that was a start. Mia began to visit me every 2 weeks. Sometimes she came with Mark. Other times he would drop her off and pick her up later. Those afternoons with her were precious. I read her stories, like before. We baked cookies together. We talked about everything and nothing. And I watched her grow into an incredible young woman. Smart, compassionate, strong. One day, while we were making cookies, she said something that stuck with me. "Grandma, when I grow up, I want to be like you. I want to be brave like you were." "Why do you say that, my love?" "Because you left when you had to. Because you chose to be okay, even if it meant being alone. Mom says you were selfish, but I think you were brave. And when I grow up, if anyone ever treats me badly, I'm going to remember your example, and I'm going to leave, too." I cried hearing those words, because they meant my suffering had not been in vain, that I had taught something valuable to the next generation, that Mia would not repeat my mistakes of staying too long in places where she was not valued. A year passed from the day I walked out of that house. A year since I canceled that $10,000 transfer. A year since I took back my dignity. And my life was completely different. I had my apartment. I had my routine. I had my friends. I had my volunteer work at the library that filled me with purpose. I had a cautious but honest relationship with Mark. I had Mia in my life. And above all, I had myself. Complete, whole, valued. One Saturday afternoon, Carol organized a small celebration at my apartment. She invited our group of friends. Susan brought a cake. Another friend brought flowers. And we toasted to my first year of freedom, to Eleanor. For her courage. For reminding us all that it's never too late to choose yourself. The glasses clinked, and I felt a happiness so profound it almost hurt. These women had held me up. They had seen me at my worst and helped me get to this moment. And now we were celebrating together, not just my survival, but my rebirth. That night, after everyone had left, I sat by my window with my notebook. And I wrote one last entry. Today marks 1 year since I chose myself. 1 year since I decided that my dignity was worth more than my fear. And I look back at the woman I was, and I barely recognize her. That woman lived in the shadows, waiting for crumbs of love, accepting humiliations because she believed she deserved nothing better. But I am not that woman anymore. Now I am a woman who knows her worth, who has a voice, who takes up space without apologizing, who understands that self-love is not selfishness, but survival, who knows that sometimes walking away from family is the only way to save yourself. Was it easy? No. Did it hurt? Terribly. Was it worth it? Every second of pain was worth the peace I have now. And if anyone is reading this, if anyone is living what I lived, I want you to know something. You can do it too. You can choose yourself too. You also deserve more than crumbs. You deserve respect. You deserve dignity. You deserve true love that doesn't come with conditions or humiliations. Because in the end, it's not the pension or the house that defines you. It's your ability to get up, time and time again. It's your courage to walk away from what destroys you. It's your strength to build a new life, even when you think it's too late. I did it at 68 years old. And if I could, you can too. I closed the notebook. I looked out the window onto the street, lit by the lamps, and I smiled. A true smile that came from the depths of my being. Because I had survived, I had healed, and I had recovered the most important thing of all. I had recovered myself.